I don't even know where to begin. Well, actually, I do. I'll start with something I've suspected for a long time. The man I've been living with under the same roof for the last 15 years has been cheating on me. And you know what's the funniest part? He didn't even try to hide it. No, seriously, I kind of had a hunch, but when it was confirmed, it felt like a shock to the system. His name is Mike. He's not really my husband, not officially. We call each other husband and wife for convenience. But honestly, he's just my live-in partner. We've been through divorces, custody battles, child support, all of it. We each brought our own wounded soul and handful of problems into this relationship. We live in my 3-bedroom apartment in the suburbs of Seattle, my place because I bought it after my divorce. Or as he puts it, our home. I have a daughter who's all grown up and lives on her own, and Mike, well, he pretty much has just his job and me. And, as it turns out, someone else. In 2022, we started arguing for the first time. I remember the world was in chaos. The pandemic, lockdowns. He didn't lose his job, but I could tell something was off. He'd come home with this guilty look on his face. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was just work stress, reports, problems with his boss. Then one day, his journal came into my hands. Well, not really came into my hands. He just left it on the kitchen table. A simple black notebook with a leather cover. Who wouldn't peek? Especially if you're suspicious. I opened it and started reading. There were business-like entries. Meeting with a client, conference call with partners, and among all that, once a week, there was a recurring entry. Lunch with LP. LP? I thought, what the hell? Those are my initials, and the first thing that came to my mind was that stupid joke. To avoid getting caught, call your wife and mistress the same name. At first, I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just paranoia. What if it was just a coincidence? But then, in January, while going through the same black notebook, I found what looked like a diary entry. Mike described in detail how he enjoyed being with this woman, how she inspired him, the incredible nights they shared. That's when I froze, right in the middle of the kitchen, because I was sure the problem was with me. I'd never manipulated him, never turned him down. I'd given my all in these 15 years. The Kama Sutra? I could have written 10 pages of it. Toys? Any kind. I did everything I could to make our home a warm, welcoming place, to make him feel like a man, loved, needed, and all of that had been for nothing. I've been here before. My first husband cheated on me too. It was complicated back then. I tried to save the marriage for our daughter's sake. But it didn't work. He left for someone else, to go off on his own, as I call it, and I was left alone, with a child in my arms. And now, here I am, facing it a second time. The same pain, the same thoughts. Am I not good enough? What's wrong with me? Since January, I've felt like a ghost. Every morning I'd wake up thinking, I need to talk to him. But then the fear would hit. What if it's already over? Maybe they've already finished things. What if I start the conversation and it all falls apart? Or worse, what if he leaves? Or stays but becomes cold, bitter, a stranger? The fear kept me up at night, kept me from eating. There was also one thought that was slowly tearing me apart from the inside. At the beginning of our relationship, when we were both getting used to each other, Mike once drank too much, and that's when I learned that he could be dangerous. Almost a year passed. I lived like I was in a fog, just floating along, hoping that somehow everything would resolve itself. And then, one November evening, Tuesday, I remember clearly, during yet another petty argument, I snapped. The words came out before I could stop them. Did you sleep with her? I asked. He looked at me for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. No excuses, no lies. He just asked, should I come home tonight? I didn't say a word. Then, barely able to speak, I finally managed. Do what you want. Since then, everything has changed. No, he's still here. He sleeps over. We still go places together sometimes, exchange a few words now and then. But there are no hugs, no kisses, no intimacy. Just cold. Pure, icy cold, living under the same roof with us. The only thing that still connects us is our cat. Yeah, it's ironic, isn't it? An animal who has no clue that everything between us is falling apart has become the only thread that binds us together. One evening, I watched Mike sitting on the couch with his phone, and I thought, we're like a suitcase with no handle. It's too hard to throw away, too heavy to carry. And now, looking at this empty version of us, I have no idea what to do. How do you live with someone who betrayed you but is still here? How do you stay without breaking?
Life sometimes presents you with stories that you couldn't make up if you tried. I have a story that still feels almost unbelievable. It all happened during the time when I was about to get married. Emily and I had been dating for almost 2 years. Everything was going perfectly. She was smart, beautiful, with a clear plan for the future. I thought I had found the one. I proposed, she said yes, and we started planning the wedding. There were only 2 weeks left. One evening, I decided to surprise her. I bought her favorite pastries, a bouquet of lilies, and drove to her place unannounced. I walked into the apartment and immediately noticed a pair of unfamiliar shoes by the door. A cold wave hit me, but I still went into the living room. And there they were, she and some guy. They were sitting too close, way too close. I understood everything right away. The look in her eyes, his posture, everything showed that they were much more than just friends. I didn't make a scene. I just turned around and left. I went outside, lit a cigarette. It felt like the whole world had collapsed. I felt emptiness, anger, and a wild sense of betrayal. I stood there for a long time trying to gather myself. Then I saw her mother. She lived in the house next door. She had a bag of pharmacy shopping in her hands. We started talking. Nothing special, but there was a calm confidence in her words that helped me hold myself together. She suggested we talk. I agreed. That's how our strange and unexpected connection began. Her mother, Molly, was an aerobics instructor. She was 41, but she looked incredible. She lived alone, divorced for years, with a lot of her own problems, but still maintained a remarkable lightness about her. We talked a lot, about everything. That night, when I first found myself in her kitchen, she told me about her divorce, about how she coped with the betrayal, how she rebuilt herself after it. I listened, and it helped me feel lighter. I called off the wedding a week later. For Emily, it was a blow. She tried to apologize, to justify herself, but I couldn't anymore. That night had shattered everything. I drew a line and left, trying to start over, and Molly became someone special to me. We started seeing each other more and more. Conversations turned into walks, walks into shared lunches, and eventually into something more. Of course, the town began to whisper. Everyone knew everyone, and rumors spread at the speed of light. People thought it was strange that I was spending so much time with my ex-fiance's mother, but I didn't care. Those meetings filled my life, gave me something I hadn't realized I was missing. In her home, I found peace, warmth, and support. However, this story couldn't last forever. At one point, Molly said we had to stop. She felt it was wrong. Too big an age gap, too many outside judgments. She was right, but for me, it was another blow. We broke up, and I haven't seen her since. Years passed. I heard she moved to another city, got remarried. I built my own life too. But sometimes, sitting alone with a cup of coffee, I remember that year. I think of her, everything we had, and everything that will never be.
We all have our secrets, our skeletons in the closet. But sometimes, those skeletons don't just get noticed. They tumble out for everyone to see. And mine? Mine are right there, front and center. I'm standing here, in a situation where anyone can point their finger, pass judgment, and decide what punishment I deserve. And you know what? That's not even the scariest part. The scariest part is that I have to accept it. Right now, I'm at rock bottom, the absolute inescapable bottom. I've lost myself, my self-respect, my peace. I don't know how long it will take to even begin to find some kind of balance within, to feel like a person who can look at herself in the mirror again. But I'm not going to make excuses. This is my story, my fault, and I'm ready to talk about it, no matter how hard it is. If you're reading this, then you already know. This whole series has blown up so much that I've become the subject of discussions, mockery, and judgment. I'd never read those popular platforms before, but now I do. Because I'm the main character of that horrible story everyone's talking about. And now I'm writing here. Because it seems like this is the only place where I can express everything that's inside me. So, everyone wants to know, why did I do it? Why so cruel? Why so low? And no, I'm not going to say that I was unhappy in the relationship, that my partner turned out to be a bad person, that our feelings had faded. That would be a lie. We had problems, like everyone does, but he didn't deserve what I did. No one deserves that. It was my decision, my choice, and yes, my responsibility. The reason for my actions runs much deeper than just dissatisfaction or the search for something new. It's rooted in me. These are problems that I created on my own. I know them. I'm working through them. But they're still here. Why did I choose this path? The answer to that question I'll save for therapy, because no single post, or even 1,000 words, will be enough to explain it. The person with whom this happened, he's a separate story. He owed me nothing, was nothing to me but a moment of weakness. But my partner knows who he is. He knows everything. Everything I did in this relationship. Every moment when I acted in ways I shouldn't have. I have nothing left to hide. I've shown myself for who I am, and that picture is far from pretty. I admit that. As for the health concerns, yes, there was unprotected contact. Yes, it raised even more questions and worries, especially now that everything has come to light. Before making the move, I asked for health certificates, and yes, they were provided. We were both clean, but so far, we haven't had any tests done. That's another one of those details that will come to light later. As if this whole series requires a sequel. I read the comments from people offering their solutions for my fate. From send her to the ends of the earth to crush her like an insect. Who are these people? Just like me, broken by life, but perhaps their pain has turned into hatred. Has condemning others become the new therapy? Or have we all become so mired in our own anger that there's no other way out? Now I understand that I should have ended the relationship. Before betraying, before causing harm, before destroying everything, I could have just left. That would have been the honest and right step. But I didn't. And now, here I am, standing amidst the ruins of my own life. Every step, every decision, every action brought me here. And I fully admit that I am the one to blame. The stress I'm experiencing is indescribable. This situation has torn me apart, but I know it was my choice. I brought myself to this point, and if you're reading this, please understand one thing. Infidelity has happened, is happening, and will happen. This isn't an excuse, it's reality. I'm not the first one to make this mistake, and unfortunately, I won't be the last. People aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. The only thing I can say is, don't do what I did. If you feel that the relationship isn't working, leave. Don't destroy yourself. Don't ruin another person. Don't bring more pain into the world. It's better to remain honest and broken than to survive like this, having lost everything human inside yourself. I'm writing all of this not to seek forgiveness, not to be pitied or judged. I want to ask a question that I can't seem to answer. What now? How do you find yourself again if you've destroyed everything that was ever you? How do you keep living when you know your actions have hurt someone who didn't deserve it? I'd be happy to hear your thoughts, even if they're harsh.
I don't even know where to begin because all these thoughts and feelings are just consuming me. I want to share my story because maybe someone will see the situation from the outside and tell me what I missed or what I did wrong, or maybe someone will just understand me. Right now, the pain I'm feeling is something I never could have imagined pain could be. My wife and I have been together for 8 years. 6 of those years we've been married. We have an amazing daughter, just 1.5 years old, and she is the most precious thing I have. But despite this happiness, our journey together has been far from smooth. We were young when we started dating, 20 for me, 19 for her. These were our first serious relationships. After we got married, we immediately moved in together. I loved her, valued her, tried to give her everything I could. We decided she wouldn't work, focusing on our family. And you know what? I was fine with that. Yes, we fought, but we always made up. Though every time we argued, she'd say she wanted to leave or get divorced. It hurt, but I chalked it up to emotions. I just tried to smooth things over, not provoke jealousy, because she was incredibly jealous. I learned to stay quiet just to avoid stirring things up. And that's how the first few years went. Then came COVID. We moved in with her parents, and I lost my job for 3 months. Despite that, that period was one of the happiest of my life. During that time, we bought an apartment, settled in, and made plans. But everything changed after a big argument. She left for her parents' place, and when we met to talk, I stupidly told her that I didn't love her anymore. That was a huge mistake. 3 days later, she came back, and everything seemed like it was back to normal. But it wasn't. Everything had changed. I found out that she had been talking to a guy named Max, someone from another city. It didn't seem too serious. Just pictures of legs, torso, love declarations. That tore me apart. I cried, but I forgave her. Love, you know? Love makes you forgive even something like that. We tried to rebuild our relationship, and at some point, I thought everything was fine again. We even decided to have a child, and she got pregnant. I was on cloud 9. In 2022, I got an offer for a job in another city with a good salary, and I thought it would be the best decision for us. But in her 7th month of pregnancy, she insisted on returning to our city to give birth there, near her parents. I understood, but the contract held me back. I came every 2 weeks to be close to her and managed to arrive just after our daughter was born. She became my light in the darkness, but I began working even more to support the family. Sometimes I didn't even have the energy to call, but we texted every day. Everything fell apart in 2024 when I was transferred back to the old position in our city, with that very team she hated. I tried to change things, but I didn't succeed. When we came back, her attitude towards me turned cold. That's when I first looked through her phone. And again, there was Max. She had been talking to him ever since we came back for the birth. I lost it. I drank myself into oblivion. I told everything to my boss, an older woman I trusted, like the last lifeline. I came home and said a lot of horrible things to my wife. We both destroyed what we had. After our family finally fell apart, I quit the job that had been the source of all our conflicts and found a new one that paid 3 times less. I thought this would help restore harmony in our family. I wanted to be home more, be with my wife and daughter. But reality was much harder. The stress from the job change, the betrayal from my wife, and having a small child started eating me from the inside. I lost myself, slipped into deep depression, to the point where I had to leave the house at the end of April and move in with my mom. I went to a psychologist and psychiatrist, started taking medication. That should have helped, but life kept throwing absurd surprises my way. My young female psychologist confessed she had feelings for me. It was so ridiculous that I didn't even know how to react. We went for walks, talked. She was in her own drama. Her husband had cheated on her. It felt like we were connecting in our broken lives, but I quickly realized that this wasn't what I needed. I didn't want to use someone else's pain, and I wasn't fooling myself. I only wanted one woman, my wife. I ended those strange relationships and decided I wanted to try and rebuild my family. Although, in the 2 months I wasn't living at home, I barely showed interest in my daughter, but I continued to pay the mortgage, utilities, and sent money to my wife when she asked. But how could I return? Where do I even start? I didn't have the strength or the answers. In the summer, my wife asked me to pick up the remaining things from our house. We went for a walk and talked. I missed her so much that it was driving me mad. Even knowing she was talking to Max again, I couldn't let her go. The only thing that calmed me was that he lived in another city. That gave me some illusory hope. I became a weekend father. Every meeting with my daughter, I tried to make special, but I could see the shadow of pain in her eyes from our separation. At the same time, I couldn't keep up with all the expenses. The job that paid less didn't cover everything. I fell into debt. To cope, I started a business and took out another loan. I worked at my regular job, then worked for myself afterward. My biggest hope was that my wife would come to her senses and stop talking to that guy. But I found out he had come to our city and she had met with him. She insisted nothing happened between them, and like a naive fool, I wanted to believe her. In the end, the debts began to crush me. The business failed, and I went bankrupt. I'm probably writing this not just for myself, but for anyone who might find themselves in a similar situation. Maybe it will help someone. Or maybe someone will tell me what I'm doing wrong because I've already lost myself. I don't have the strength to fight anymore, but I can't just give up either. Until September, I tried to maintain some kind of relationship with my wife. There were constant ups and downs. Hope one moment, pain the next. I asked her to stop talking to Max and finally decide what was going to happen between us. She promised she would give me her answer by the end of November, and she seemed to have stopped communicating with him. It felt like things were getting better. We spoke every day, laughed, went for walks, and sometimes even went to cafes. But all the while I kept hearing accusations about me not being there, about all my mistakes, and I accepted it. I tolerated it. I thought that if I just endured it, everything would get better. On November 30th, we rented an apartment for a day to spend time as a family. We even rented a game console and played all day. It was probably the happiest moment of this year. For the first time in a long time, I felt that maybe we could still be together, that we could fix things, but the happiness didn't last long. The next day, in a store, we ran into an old colleague of mine. She greeted me, mentioned that people at my old job missed me, and asked if I would consider coming back. I gave a curt answer and just left. I didn't want to talk about it, but my wife immediately demanded an explanation. When we got home, we talked, but I still felt lost. That night we lay in bed together, but she still wouldn't let me kiss her, and intimacy was out of the question. Despite that, I was happy. I thought the worst was behind us. But in the morning, everything collapsed. On December 2nd, I went to work, and we kept texting and calling like usual. That evening at home, we began discussing our relationship again. My wife wanted to know everything, even my secrets, and I decided to be completely honest with her. I confessed that when I moved to Chelyabinsk, one of my colleagues admitted that she loved me. But I did nothing because I didn't care, and that honesty destroyed me. My wife cried and called me a traitor. But the real blow came later. She admitted that the situation in the store had been bothering her, and she called Max. She told him everything, how bad she was feeling, how hard things had been. Since then, they started talking again. And yesterday, I found out that it was still going on, and Max even wrote to me himself. He told me to let her go because they were in love. Love. That word makes me want to disappear. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid to go home because the house no longer feels like a home. Every argument seems to drive another nail into the coffin of our relationship. But what hurts me the most is thinking about my daughter. If this person ever tries to raise her or even just touches her, I don't know what I'll do. I think about this every day. Sometimes it seems easier just to disappear, to leave. The debts are covered, the apartment is too. My family would get the payments, and I wouldn't have to carry this unbearable burden anymore. Sometimes I think I could run away to Canada, where I have relatives. I lived there until I was 14, and it seems like the only place I can escape to from all of this. But I'm still here. Maybe because deep down, I still hope. Or maybe because I'm just too afraid to take the final step. I don't know. All I want is to get my family back, to be with my daughter, but it feels like I've lost everything I had. I'm still trying to figure out how to keep going. Should I keep fighting for my family, or accept that it's all lost? Maybe someone reading this has gone through something similar and knows how to climb out of this hole. What should I do?